It's the most fun thing. You think every day, you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know how it's going to turn out. For the Evening Standard, particularly because our deadlines are tighter than others. So actually what we don't have is some of the reflection. Sometimes it's a bit in haste, but you also don't have the squabbling, no time for it. And as you come towards deadline, you know, this sort of fantastic concentrated calm and terrible language in between it. Something comes out which is a sort of alchemy that even though you think, oh, of course you could always done better, it was sort of the best it could be at midday. So I think the Standard's always been a bit of a sort of speedboat compared to some of the more magisterial publications. Tomorrow's news today, and I think it is the first time that you see news properly having gone through the process of being checked and phone calls made and corroborated, and so it has to be dead accurate and legal and fair and all those things that sometimes online you don't have time for. I mean, we do by the time we put it online, obviously, but it goes through a sort of newspaper checks and balances, but in a really short time. Well, it's particularly strong for our newspaper because of our demographic, which is young and educated and metropolitan and tremendously savvy, particularly about anything to do with digital. And so it's not just that you have to bear in mind that they've read different sources and that they know everything. You can never sort of start with an assumption that they're of ignorance, but also it's the conversation, the things that make them laugh, the sensibility, and all that I think is particularly strong in the Standard. So it's got a slightly more exuberant and mixed style than some of the other papers. So it does have this sort of mixed mode sense of a conversation as well as news. And it's always felt that that as part of the group that it's this sort of naughty younger, you know, kid sibling really, and I think we've kept that character. And it's that it's pretty. The readers are fairly unshockable and very, very socially liberal, and so you don't want to be crass, but you can you can push at the edges a bit, and you can talk about almost anything. I don't think there's anything you couldn't discuss in the Evening Standard actually. At one point we had a sex column where one of our reporters, nice girl, just would go out into the street and just ask people fantastically intimate questions, and they're all answered very, very politely and, you know, solemnly and thoughtfully, and it could have run for years actually. In the end we just thought we probably had to knock it on the head, but there was really nothing you couldn't discuss in the Evening Standard. When the Evening Standard went free, it created a new model for newspapers and a new economic model that everyone's found very, very exciting. And that is that if you produce something of quality that people like very much, and therefore there's this goodwill, that it's like a gift rather than something free. And so people don't throw it away, they keep it, they take more copies than they should often. Around that, we then have shown, I suppose, a new sort of realism and resourcefulness, that though we still count as old media, print media, in a way our mindset is quite new media. It's quite quick-witted, it's realistic, it's commercially friendly. I mean, we're a London paper, we want the London economy to work, so we're not going to do sort of miserable pieces. Obviously, we do news, we do investigations and so on, but we're pro-London economy, so obviously we're pro-commerce, we want shops to do well, and we follow all that quite closely of how businesses are doing. We do interviews with business leaders, and there's quite a warm relationship, because we're all on the same side. You know, we want to be the greatest capital on earth, and in a way our relationship with our readers is quite close to some of the American papers that came out of cities, the Washington Post and so on, which is why there's this great trust between us, I think. Yes, so the circulation, which was, I think, less than 200,000 in the dark days and is now over 700,000. Our circulation can be targeted too in areas where we know we're particularly popular, in Canary Wharf, in Westminster, So you hit all the movers and shakers, as it were. You get the boss class, but you also get a brilliant run through the company. So people, it's intergenerational. You know, parents read it, teenagers read it, the boss reads it, his PA reads it. So it's got a really, really good feel. And it is funny how many people now associate it totally with a London experience, with this fantastic city, that we speak for a city. So it's a brand that goes beyond just being a newspaper. It represents, it's a symbol of the city, really. It's a landmark of the city in the same way that the London Eye is. You think of London, you think of the London Evening Standard and the bill that you'll see with the headline, I think. I think I'm most proud of the relationship that we have with the city and with the readers, and the way that that has been expressed, apart from some of the sort of celebratory aspects. I suppose it's in our campaigns where we've really harnessed the resources of the city. The latest one is our campaign on apprentices. So we have, at a time when we know that jobs matter so much to people in London, anything to do with work matters terribly to Londoners. You come here to work, you come here to make your fortune. And the people that can't get onto the ladder, it is something that we feel is a painful exclusion. And so rather than appeal to the state or something, we've just gone straight to businesses and said, look, if you just take one, and people have said not just one, they've taken 10, they've taken 50. We started with getting in our apprenticeships into Goldman Sachs, and I love that because you know, you've got middle class parents going, people have got into Goldman Sachs, I can't get my child into Goldman Sachs, and that was sort of brilliant. So it's proper opportunities, and really London working at its best, where this very, very successful part of London will also help the bit of London that needs a hand up. So it's called Ladder for London, and really Ladder for London should be everything that the Standard's about. It's about sort of aspiration and hope and a helping hand, actually, to you know, you lift as you climb, I think is the. And it is interesting that when we did the apprenticeship campaigns and talking to some of the people who've tried to do similar things themselves, government bodies, and they all wanted to know how we managed just to harness this momentum. And that's what the papers have the power to do, to really bring an issue to the fore, and to promote it, and to not let go of it, and be sort of, you know, tenacious and so on, until the point when people feel they have to do something, and it's that shaking of the conscience is a really positive thing that newspapers can do. I think we have a very good relationship with our readers because we understand them, perhaps in a way that we didn't always. That I think there was a time when one tried to make the readers sort of fit a model of a newspaper. I think our relationship with our readers is very good because we understand them, and that's helped, very much helped by social media, helped by the fact that people can respond immediately to things, and you have a very good sense of people, of where they shop, of what they're interested in, of what they do for entertainment, and particularly in London, where you can track all these things quite easily. So we're really responding to what we know our readers like and what they are, and so you don't try and impose your views on them, perhaps in the way that papers used to. Oh, if you get it wrong, you'll hear instantly, and I think that's really important. And I always look at you know, all the sort of correspondence that comes in, and our letters page, and which we also of course take texts. And you can see how it's a politically divided city. It's very interesting. It's probably more Labour than Tory, but with exceptions. So people are socially liberal, but that they go out a lot, that they have a lot of sex. That they're really fun people, our readers, and they're sort of clever and they're interesting, and they've got fascinating stories. And of course, as we become more and more of this world city and more cosmopolitan, you know, the stories become far more sort of complex. We're doing a series at the moment with the British Museum on objects of the world, and we're tying them to communities in London. Suddenly, you know, vast German community, a Nigerian community, and so on, that you know, you really do feel that you are the centre of the world here. So you start with all the great things that are happening in London, and then you look at the people who are making that happen. And actually we have a list each year called the Top 1000. And in the past, there has been a slightly more hierarchical view of person at the top of a company, and then you work down middle management and so on. And now it's just this great creative explosion, so we've got this 17-year-old who's invented an app, and you've got and parts of London that's always changing, Tech City in the east, you've got Peckham in the south, it's such a sort of fluid, vibrant place, and you just need to capture all that. Of course, we're all Londoners. We're in the office, and we have a lot of young staff, and they come in slightly late in the morning sometimes, and looking sometimes still in the same clothes I noticed they wore when they went home, and they're having a fantastic time. So we're testing everything ourselves. Our staff are doing their own food blogs. They've got cocktail blogs, because they're part of this amazing scene. So we really do feel we're at the centre of it and living it, and we're all Londoners too, of course. We love London. Well, I think one admires professionalism where you see it, and you get that in the Mail and the Telegraph, a sort of news professionalism that you can because you're going for the same things, often, or the same interviews and so on. If a story is done well, one admires that. There are some really fantastic reporters out there. I suppose I admire obsession where I see it in a reporter. I think in the past, newspapers have been behind on understanding a commercial environment, and a bit haughty, actually, towards advertising. I think the Standard really is different in that way. We love this London economy and we want it to work, and therefore it's in our interest to work hand in hand with commerce. It's a reason we're successful. We work really well with advertising here. We get on very well in the two teams. We work on big events like the Theatre Awards, and the Film Awards, the Top 1000, and we do that with sponsors. I think we work very well with sponsors of really working out what they would like and how they would work well with us and what we can do to help. So we're always sort of seeking alliances where we can, love advertising. I used to just look through paper and just see the stories in the way that commerce only ever looked at the advertising. Now I look at both, and I see them actually in a rather harmonious way. I do remember when we had our first page 3 as an advert, and that seemed a tremendous sort of step out of line, and it was of a car, a rather beautiful car, and watching people on the tube just admiring it lingering on this page 3, and that was a rather sort of seminal moment of thinking, actually, if advertising looks great, that's good for us, and I think we've seen it in the magazine environment. And I'm now seeing very, very sort of creative, fun advertising coming through in the paper, and that's exciting for us. I think, of course, we have to work together. I'm really interested in the way that the actual shapes of the page are changing, so that as advertising becomes a bit more sort of inventive and racier, and the shapes are changing, that you're adapting stories around it. You're thinking what works as a package, what makes this look good. So it really is hand in hand with advertising.